From the C-suite, lessons on unlocking growth mindset amid economic uncertainties. The panelists are Connie Mashaba, Managing Director, Black Like Me; Andrietta Muforo, Partner TLCom Capital LLP; Dr. Candice Hartley, Chief People Officer, Eskom; Dr. Mamello Masia, Chief People Officer, McDonald's South Africa; and Prabashni Naidu, Group Chief Governance Officer, APSA. And the moderator is award-winning financial journalist, Fifi Peters.
I can't believe that we have been doing this for 11 years. My goodness, how quickly time does fly when we celebrate excellence and a bit of progress, probably not as much as we would have liked to see, but a bit of progress as women in the advancement of our businesses and our careers. I love the month of March. I love the month of March because women all over the world in the month of March are given the opportunity just to reflect on the progress that they have made individually within their businesses, as well as individually within their careers, regarding the goals that they have set and the goals that they have managed to meet. We are able to reflect on how many setbacks we have faced, how many of those setbacks perhaps have been our own doing, how many have been because of factors beyond our own control. But more importantly, we're able to reset and recharge for the year ahead in how we continue to move forward with progress and with impact. Now, as Renu did mention, as our keynote speaker, Epeleng, also did mention, the moving forward that is happening right now is happening in an environment of continued uncertainty, as many of you know. And it's surprising that despite the fact that the shocks, the economic shocks that we are experiencing are happening a lot more often, every single time a new one lands, it's still shocking. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel. Nonetheless, I'm going to put it to us that today we're making the argument that uncertainty then is the name of the game. Mm-hmm. So if we agree that this uncertainty that we're experiencing more frequently is the name of the game, I'm going to ask these ladies here to share with us their rules of engagement in this game of uncertainty. And what I love about the panel composition this morning, ladies, and a few gents that are also celebrating us here in the room, thank you, is that they come from a vast array of industries. We have banking, we've got consumer goods, we've got energy, we've got venture capital, and we've got entrepreneurship. And these are ladies who are navigating the same challenges and economic calamities as we are, but they are somehow beating the odds. And so I'm going to put it to you to help us understand exactly how it is you're pushing forward, notwithstanding the chaos that you're experiencing. And more importantly, I'm going to ask each of you to share with us the mindset that you have in your own minds to win in this game of uncertainty. So I hope that you're ready. I know that you're ready because we have all been preparing for this discussion here today. And I know that you are certainly looking forward to giving back your pearls of wisdom to the audience members in this room. So Ms. Connie, I'm going to start with you, ma'am. Yep. Back in the days, Black Like Me lands as a business in South Africa. You know, fast forward and you'll take us through the history. It has become one of the most recognizable consumer brands in this country. Let us not forget that when Black Like Me started in this country, it started in an environment where it was very difficult to be black like us. It was very difficult also for women businesses to do their thing, and yet you did. So when you look at what is happening in the world right now, you compare the different crises that you've experienced back then and what you're experiencing right now, what do you think about it right now? And I'm wondering whether the tools that helped you succeed then can still apply right now and can still apply to many of the ladies who are running businesses right now on the continent, ma'am.
Good morning, Fifi. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I think the tools can still apply, but I think now the tools are much easier than when we started. So when we started Black Like Me is 41 years old this year. So when we started, we didn't have infrastructure. It was those days in apartheid South Africa where, as a black business, you're not allowed to operate in South Africa. We had to operate in the homelands at the time. And very interesting, the concept came from my husband, who used to duck and dive, selling this and that. And I used to work for South and Sons at the time as a junior bookkeeper. I was earning about 800 rand at the time. And when he recruited me, he said, just come and join us. So there were the three of them with me. I was an administrator at the time. I promise you, earning 800 rand at the time in 1982, and having to join Black Like Me, earning 400 rand. We started in a 200 square meter factory. I stayed, the two salespeople went out to sell. The chemist had to go and buy stuff. We didn't have a phone. So, because we were in Harankua, 200 square meters, we had a mobile phone. So I'd be in the office, sitting on the crate, and having to listen, to the phones coming. But to be honest with you, I think a lot of challenges that people are having right now is funding. We did not have funding at the time. We had the most expensive funding when we started.
Sure.
We had a businessman in Harankua gave us 30,000 rand at the time. And the exchange rate, another currency at the time interest rate was about 20%. And he gave us 20% plus 10%. So we paid 30% interest rate for the 30,000 rand that we had.
Sure.
So I'm thinking now, yes, funding is a problem, but back then it was even more problematic. So for now, you can even do crowdfunding, you can do all sort of stuff. But where we started, it was difficult. But I must say, it's because of resilience, because we were hungry at the time. We needed to succeed in those days. And I think these days, it's not as easy, especially for women, but it's very, very possible because of the opportunities that women are having, especially in South Africa.
Sure. You know what? Thank you so much for providing that perspective of how much the world has changed in your view and in your experience in the past 41 years. Because a lot of us are experiencing some of these challenges for the first time. And for a lot of us, it does feel like the world is ending and it does feel like it's tough. But you've essentially said that, look, you've got a lot of things that we didn't have right now. You've got technology, you've got a lot more infrastructure that we didn't have.
Absolutely.
And your interest rates are not 30%. Depending on your credit record, I don't know what your relationship with the bank is, but they are not 30% in terms of paying back that loan. Out of interest though, and Andrietta, I'm going to come to you, what could 800 rand buy in your days?
A lot of stuff.
A salary of 800 rand.
I got married by 800 rand at the time, which was 44 years ago. So it was a lot of money at the time.
Okay.
But we still thought it wasn't enough. But when you think about it, it was a lot of money at the time.
Oh, right.
But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. You see, as an entrepreneur, you don't have enough resources. You have to maximize what you have.
Sure.
And be innovative with the little resources that you have.
Sure.
As opposed to, maybe upside they've got a lot of money. They can give you a lot of budget. So with entrepreneurs, you don't have resources, but what you do, you maximize on what you have and be innovative and be resilient.
All right. Maybe ABSA does. I think a lot of us in the room would have seen the financial results that came from the banking sector. Sorry to pick on you, Prabhashini, but you guys are doing well.
Thank you.
We'll come back to that in just a moment in time, though. Andrietta, let me come to you. And I'm going to park the money topic and the access to funding topic just for now. I'm not making it small because it is a big issue for a lot of women still in this business. We'll come to it and we'll give it enough airtime. But I also want to come to you just regarding the leadership traits amongst founders right now that manage to successfully stay resilient and scale their business in this time. So Andrietta, just by background, she's in venture capital, so her firm, and she works with other institutions that help invest and scale tech companies here on the African continent. With that said, Andrietta, I know a lot of the ladies in this room know that in times of economic hardship, funding and perhaps appetite for risk does become a little bit cautious. Before we get there, though, talk to us about the traits that some of the founders that you continue to invest in right now, despite the hardships, have, and how they manage to scale their businesses, like Mam Connie, in times of difficulties.
No, it's a fantastic question. And when I think about growing a business or scaling a business for founders, because we've worked with many founders, fundamentally, there are three things that a founder needs to be able to grow and scale. So the first one is you need to understand your ability to attract talent. Because without people, you're not able to build a business. And attracting talent means that it's about vision and it's about culture. So as a leader or as a founder or an entrepreneur, you need to have that ability to attract talent, articulate what is the problem I'm solving, how to get people to come with you along that journey, and also be building a company and a culture that's conducive for people to grow. So talent is one. Then the second thing is about capital. Because capital is critical for growth. And when you're talking for capital, in order to attract capital, for me as an investor, what I'm looking for is when I'm talking to a business, I want to know what is the strategy and are you able to execute the strategy? And strategy is fundamentally, in the end, is about two things. How are you differentiated? Are you providing a service at a lower cost or higher value? So you need to be able to articulate that. So there's talent, then there is capital, then the third thing is about customers, which is you have to be offering a product that customers can see that this is something that I need. So as a founder and as a leader, you need to make sure you have those things and win in those three markets. And the other thing that I've also seen over the years, which is quite critical, is the ability to pivot. Because the market is changing so quickly. Yeah. The companies we've invested in where the business model they pitched to us at the beginning, and which they probably executed for the first 2 or 3 years, is very different from the business now. We have one company, for example, they started filling the gap of junior engineers and placing them in companies globally. Then the junior engineers became, there were so many now junior developers, they shifted to senior developers. Now there's AI. So the company has shifted almost 3 times. So you need to be a founder who has this, it's almost a growth mindset in many ways, which is this ability to change and to adapt and understand what is changing within my environment and change quickly before you get left behind.
Sure. And so I'll put it to you that maybe a lot of the businesses that are run by women in this room have exactly that. They've got the talent, perhaps not as much, because you know when you're starting, you can't afford to pay people a whole lot of money, but you've got people who believe in your vision. They need the capital. They don't have that. And that's why they do come to financiers, such as yourself, and maybe even Prabhashini, we'll get to her. They even have the customers. They've got customers, and they've even got the market need. They've got a bit of demand. They could probably be doing a lot more if they had the capital. And if there's one thing about entrepreneurs I've learned, those guys are very agile. So you want them to be this today, they'll be that. If you want them to be that today, they'll be that. So they've got the agility and the adaptability, and yet they still struggle to bring in the money. And I just maybe would like a view from you to help us understand why, and to help us understand whether investors that you speak to at the table are changing the way they do things in this environment where, yes, one has to be cautious, but one also has to look at the future, and there's a lot of innovation on this African continent that needs backing.
Yeah, it's a great question, and so the question of why are entrepreneurs starting to raise capital? There's a blockage in how capital flows fundamentally. So if I think about our fund, when we started investing, this was back in 2014, the entire African continent I work specifically in venture, so we fund tech entrepreneurs. The entire African continent raised $200 million. Fast forward, it's actually grown. Last year, it was about $4 billion if you count the equity and the debt. So it has grown so much, maybe 20x, but it's fundamentally 1% of global venture capital. So it's still nothing in that respect. So there's one challenge, which is the flow of global capital to Africa because of the perception of risk and not really understanding the ecosystem and what is the real opportunity. I think that's one. The second is around our local capital is actually not investing in the entrepreneurs. So whether you think about the high net worth individual, the big corporates, we need to unblock how capital is flowing so that we're actually investing, whether it's in SMEs, whether it's in tech companies, because there's blockage there. And which is part of the work that we do because, I mean, our fund is we manage about $250 million. So we've unlocked some capital, but we need more capital. And building networks to allow entrepreneurs to be able to get access to these investors, because sometimes it's also a struggle to get a meeting with the investors. I think the other thing is also the disconnect between understanding the different types of capital, because you need to know what's the right type of capital for your business, because it's not every capital that you should be taking. So what kind of business are you building, and who is it? Should I go to a bank for a working capital facility? Should I go to a private equity fund for growth capital? Should I go to a venture capital fund we're looking for businesses where it's highly scalable. So also just that understanding. So we need a basket of capital. Part of the work is unlocking that capital and also unlocking it locally because it's not coming from outside, right? If you think about what's happening globally,
Sure.
most of Western countries are looking inward more.
Sure.
So that means also it's being pulled back in some respects. But I think progress has been made. Like I said, when I started doing this work, it was 200. Last year it's 4 billion. So I think as an entrepreneur, be encouraged to keep building. Capital is more selective, but there is capital.
Okay, so progress has been made. We do know it's a slow progress. It's a slow process, rather, but nonetheless, you're saying it's moving in the right direction. And you remind me of the words that a businessman, Aliko Dangote, says quite often, talking about, the difference between foreign capital and local capital. And he says quite often that you cannot expect a foreign capital to come and invest where local capital should be doing the work. So it begins at home. But say, for instance, you mentioned a few funding options and avenues that one could go to. And say, for instance, I want to go to a bank. Prabashni. I might want to come to your bank. And jokes aside, you are part of one of the major financial institutions and banks on the African continent. And I wonder when, Henrietta is talking about the role of domestic capital right now in helping to perhaps plug these funding gaps. Your role and your background, I know, is from audit and is from risk and you do a lot of work in governance right now. In fact, that's a key function of your portfolio right now. How do you look at inclusion, perhaps, as a governance issue? And what is the response to local banks or from local banks when you hear investors talking about the fact that a lot more local money needs to go into these businesses than is currently the case?
Yeah, thanks, Fifi, and thanks to everybody. I think it's such an important topic because Africa is such a large entrepreneurial society, and if you look at women entrepreneurs, 58% of entrepreneurs on the continent are women. So from an ABSA perspective, that stat is not lost on us, and we often refer to ourselves. Our business banking business talks about us being the bank of the entrepreneur, and many of the offerings that we have are targeted at really understanding our clients and our customers across the continent. And it's not just about the funding. The funding is really important, but it's also about advising and guiding these businesses to build sustainable, long-term, businesses. From a governance perspective, what my team looks at, what I look at, is making sure that Africa as a continent, especially the markets that we operate in as a banking group, that those organizations are run at kind of world-class standards when it comes to governance, that investors can trust that their money is going into institutions that are well governed, that are well run. And when we talk about governance, it really is talking about trust, which is the currency of banking, but it's also the currency of capital funders, right? They're looking at businesses that they believe are ethically principled, that are well run. And when we talk about uncertainty, especially since uncertainty, and you made the point, Fifi, up front, it's become no longer cyclical. It's almost part of how we do business. And in periods of uncertainty and decision-making around that, it's so critical that we don't only think about how we respond to a crisis or to an uncertain scenario in the short term, but we also think about long-term impact. And that, in a nutshell, is what I would describe as the job we do in making sure that we don't just fund for the short term, we fund and partner with our clients for long-term benefit, and governance is brought into that offering.
Yeah, can I actually stick also a little moment further on governance, and maybe a real reflection on your end, and particularly when we talk about the small businesses, the medium businesses, the entrepreneurs, how are they scoring when it comes to governance and compliance within their organizations? Are things getting better? Are there areas of improvement? Because I think that perhaps that could also be one of the reasons why many of them face a lot more no's when trying to access funding than yeses.
No, it's a good point, and I think the governance needs to be very much aligned to the size of the business. And when you start a business, and I think about Connie talking about starting the business, multiple decades ago, the size of that business may not require very sophisticated governance capability. It may just require very simple, processes and frameworks to manage risk within that environment. But it's when you scale a business and when you look to grow a business across multi-jurisdictions or multiple business lines that governance needs a heightened, and then you require the sophistication of the process to make sure that your business is compliant with regulations, that you have the capability to really understand the risk that you're taking to get the opportunity and the upside of what you're looking to build. So in my view, there isn't a one-size-fits-all. It is very much about the vision that you have for your business, and as your business grows, your governance needs to be growing with that ambition.
Sure. Maybe also in simple terms, those taxes must be paid. Dr. Candice and Dr. Mamelo, I love it that we are finishing the first round of questions with you, because we've been speaking about some of the external factors required in leading businesses in trying times right now. Having finished off with the likes of finance and governance, but ultimately businesses are built by people. And it's these people that also are experiencing these tough times that perhaps, morale could be lacking, or they could also be worried and anxious. You mentioned AI. A lot of us are anxious about what AI means for our current positions and our future roles. Dr. Candice, I want to begin with you, leading a people right now in an organization that is both complex and very important in South Africa's standing, and I'm talking about Eskom. I do know a few colleagues that there was a time where colleagues at Eskom were ashamed to be seen in the uniform because of how much what was happening in the organization with the power cuts and the load shedding were costing individuals and were costing businesses. Thank goodness those days are gone, and I hope that they stay gone. With that said, they were also aware of some of the tough decisions that had to be made within the business in order for the business to be sustainable and viable. Tough decisions on jobs, tough decisions on pay, tough decisions on strategy that ultimately did have an impact on their livelihoods right now. So maybe you can talk to us about leading people in an organization in difficult times, helping to sustain the morale of people who are also feeling the doomsday of the economic environment.
Good. I think I'll have to use this one. Thank you, Fifi, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in the panel, to the leadership of Forbes Africa, the Guardians that joined me here this morning. And as I was preparing for the panel and I was thinking about the question around how do we lead in uncertain times, I thought Eskom as an organization that I joined just over a year ago has oftentimes been in the public eye for all the wrong reasons, and I think you mentioned some of those reasons. But if we had to pause and reflect and think about this utility, 102 years old. Eskom as an entity has 25% of the total continent's installed electricity capacity, right? If you think about that in population size, South Africa is less than 5% of the African continent. Beyond that, Eskom has the only nuclear power station on the continent that they've been running successfully for the better part of 40 years, right? More recently, we recorded at least 300 days without any electricity interruption, no load shedding. And our nuclear power station had a 94% electricity availability factor for 365 days. Now, when you sit back and you compute that impact on the economy, it's a substantial impact. Not just for us in South Africa, but also our role within the region and our role within the continent at large. But when you really boil down to how do we get these results from a history of Eskom as a utility, the heydays, about 25 years ago, Eskom was the best performing utility globally, to what happened in the more recent decades where they had over 13 different CEOs. When you think about how did we get from being the best utility 25 years ago globally to where we are today, where we are starting to see the winds of change in the organization, I would argue to say it boils down to our people. And Simon Sinek said this a while back. He said, 100% of our investors are people, 100% of our customers and consumers are people, 100% of our employees are people. If you don't understand people, you don't understand business. But people needs to be led. And from a leadership point of view, what is absolutely clear and critical for me for the almost 1 year that I've been within the organization is that you have to lead with purpose. Eskom has a very clear purpose as an organization. It has a commercial mandate, which is to electrify the country, and we're currently sitting on 94% electrification within South Africa. But secondly, it has a social mandate. And that social mandate is we need to ensure that we do it at the lowest possible cost. Because I would argue to say that access to electricity is a human right. And oftentimes when you lead in private sector, as I've had many years in the private sector now working in state, we underestimate the complexity of leading a business agenda through people with a dual mandate, which is a commercial and a social mandate. So how do you lead in times of difficulty? And I think when I think about Eskom as an organization, and you would have seen more recently with the SONA announcements, we are a business that's transforming, whilst we are a business that needs to literally just keep the lights on. So how do we align and interpret the changes within the energy sector? How do we set up this 102-year-old vertically integrated entity up for competition? I think towards the end of July, the National Transmission Company will be fully independent, so they were the first unbundled entity. We are in the process of unbundling our distribution business, our generation business. We have a license to start our second line of bringing a unit online in nuclear. But all of that hinges on people leadership. Our coal fleet, our hydro fleet, all the engineering technologies and the thousands of engineers that we employ in Eskom use these instruments to provide the electricity, but we do it through our people leaders. And for us, leadership is around creating a clear vision for the future. It's around living purpose, not just talking about purpose. And more importantly, it's around creating that vision for the people of Eskom and asking the Eskom guardians to hold the mirror up.
Sure. I'm going to cut you there, and thank you so much for that. But I do get your key takeaways. It's the vision, it's the purpose, and I think also it's ensuring that the people feel a part of that vision and purpose and are aligned with it and feel as though their story or their voice matters. And Dr. Mamello, I'm going to bring it to you now as well, because McDonald's is a significant employer in South Africa, in Africa, one of the largest, particularly for young people who are the workforce of this continent. And so when you are also looking at leading people through trying times right now, just getting the backing of the people behind the purpose, behind the vision that Dr. Candace was talking about right now, what can and what should leaders be doing in this environment to help these young people, particularly women, to find their voice and to lead with confidence and still deliver those results?
Thank you, Fifi. That question actually makes me think about this continent, beyond McDonald's. Across this continent, there is such a remarkable tree, the baobab tree. It's a tree that is exposed often to drought, to storms, to harsh conditions for centuries. And I wonder whether we stop to wonder how it survives. It's extraordinary. It resists stress. And in times that are harsh, it roots itself deeper into the ground and it captures a lot of water in its trunk. And it thrives. And like those young people, like us leaders, like us entrepreneurs and women in this room, when trying times hit us, there are a number of factors that I'd like to share today that should help us root ourselves as the baobab does, that will help ourselves to gather more strength and thrive in trying times. And it makes me think about a concept by a gentleman by the name of Nasib Taleb. He talks about, in his book, Anti-Fragile, things that gain from disorder. He describes that systems don't just survive shocks. He describes that systems grow stronger in harsher times, in times of disorder, in times of uncertainty, when there's volatility. And in this book, there are many principles that he shares that will speak to what you're asking me. And mine today, I thought I'll just focus on 4 of those. And it's how you embrace manageable stress. And I'd like to get into it, but there's more to it when you read the book. How you overcompensate. And I'm sure when I say overcompensate, people will or probably misunderstand it, but I'll clarify it. How do you create options, and how do you get skin in the game? And if you let me, I'll expand on them.
I'm going to let you, but I'm going to ask you to just, you know, on your phone, you've got this, when you listen to podcasts, you've got this feature whereby you can fast forward a little bit. Because unfortunately, I'm told that our time is being fast forwarded for us. So I'm going to let you expand, but I'll just ask if you can just sum up those points for us as quickly as you can.
I will. So I talk of managing stress. We work in very challenging times. And often we forget that in those challenges, that's when you have an opportunity to build character. That's when you're being chiseled. So I'd like to remind us that like when you go and exercise and your muscles are painful, and at the end you toughen up, those stressful situations at work, in businesses, when you struggle to find funding, there is lessons that you're learning and that's chiseling you and building better character. Secondly, I speak of overcompensation. In volatile times, do not sit and rest on your laurels. Remember, there's so much more to expand yourself into. Options like, or rather, go into learning, unlearn, relearn, gain more skills. Often you're told that if you are jack of all trades, it's wrong. Actually, if you complete that whole statement, it says you're actually not just jack of all trades and master of none, you are master of more than one. So I think it's important to remember to have options. I mean, as leaders right now, if you have an opportunity to sit on boards, if you have an opportunity, as an entrepreneur, have other, projects that you work on, don't rely on one element of whatever it is your profession is, because when there's time to pivot, an opportunity for you to pivot, it will be easy for you to access other opportunities. And last, skin in the game, it's so important to know what we're worth as women. But it's also just as important as organization to create baselines for people to receive that which they deserve. I mean, we are talking about funding just now. How do we make it possible for people to access that funding? How do we make it less difficult for employees to access that which is worth, or rather their worth? I mean, just a few weeks ago, I spoke to a woman who was feeling so bad for trying to sell themselves and get an appropriate offer for themselves, and felt as if pushing was actually wrong, and that would be seen in the negative by those that lead the organization. And I said, no, we have a responsibility to fight for that which we believe in,
Sure.
and believe that we're worth it, and we should be paid for that which we're worth, whether you're in business, whether you are an employee or a leader. So those are elements that I think we should think of, whether you're a leader, you're a young person, but entrench yourself like that baobab tree and just keep reaching in to keep you strong and to thrive in this uncertain times.
Sure. And thank you so much for that. Apologies to have rushed you, and I hear you with the baobab tree. But for 1 year, it would be nice to just be soft and have a little bit of a soft life. I don't know about anyone else in this room, but I hear you. We need to be resilient. We've got 3 minutes left on this panel. There's a whole lot more conversations that will be had on the stage and, of course, within the networking period. And since you did mention the book, Dr. Mamello, I'd like each of you to give me a quote in this proverbial book about, in one sentence, how you'd sum up a leadership mindset in times of uncertainty, and unquote. And Mamkoni, I'll start with you.
Sure.
I know, the pressure is pressuring, but you can do it.
I think there's a lot of things that one can do in terms of uncertainty. For me, it's about reskilling yourself, developing yourself, and making sure that when opportunity arises in whatever area, you are ready for that. Because I think the one area that I find a lot of women are struggling with is to think that they are not worth who they are. We tend to say, I spoke to my friend last night, and then I said, what do you do? And she said, I am just. We are not just. We are worth who we are.
Okay.
So in times of the challenges, just dust yourself. I've gone through that as Black Like Me. We've made some mistakes.
Sure.
And we dusted ourselves. And here we are, we're still around 41 years later.
Sure.
And how do I make sure that I continue to guide whoever that will take over from me, who is my daughter right now, to guide her, to make sure that she is ready when I retire.
Okay.
So it's just to make sure that you create an opportunity for someone else. And for you, if you fall, if there's a problem, you dust yourself and see how relevant you can be in another situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, I would ask who your friend is that you spoke with, but I can't because I've
No.
only got 2 minutes left.
Yes. I won't
Maybe
tell you.
offline.
We spoke.
But your quote is reskill, develop,
Yes.
and position yourself for the opportunity when it
Arise,
comes,
yeah.
because you're not just.
I'm not
dot,
just.
dot, dot. Close quote. Andrietta.
So I think for me, it's there's nothing new under the sun. And linked to your point, Connie, is around reskilling yourself. Many times, I think when you go through an uncertain time, it's new to you, but probably somebody has experienced it before. And I'm also a strong proponent. I sit on the board of Stanford Seed program, which is a program of the Stanford University that partners with entrepreneurs in Africa and in the emerging world to think about how do you scale your business. So I'm also a strong supporter of structured learning. How do you take learnings of people who've experienced this, who've studied through different organizations across different regions, to then be able to apply it to your own business? So I think it's about, going out and figuring out who else has experienced this. And through, through that, being able to grow and become resilient, also building networks, which is also part of what the Stanford Seed program does. You build networks of entrepreneurs so you don't feel alone, right? Even as leaders, because many times a leadership journey is very lonely, and it's even harder when you're doing it alone. But when you find somebody doing a business as well, you realize, oh, I'm not as crazy as I thought I was. There are other people who are really passionate about finding problems and solving problems, which then also encourages you and become more resilient because you now have found your tribe of people who think the same way.
Okay, I realize I'm not talking to authors, so when I say a quote, it's becoming a couple of paragraphs here. But I hear you, so there's nothing new under the sun. Talk to people, you are not alone.
Yeah.
Dr. Candace.
Mine's very simple. To lead is to serve. Mm-hmm. Serve with commitment, serve with clarity, serve with dedication. And even when it's hard, keep serving.
No, I see we've got a writer in the making there.
Very good.
Let us know when your book launch comes. I won't repeat. I think you delivered it absolutely perfectly. Dr. Mamello.
To the book I was talking about just now.
Sure.
Yeah. Wind extinguishes a candle, but it illuminates fire. And why do I bring this up? We spoke about stresses in volatile times. So that stress, remind yourself that it builds character, it chisels you. And in those times, build your skills like we said, find more options, network with a lot more people, find skin in the game. And I'm saying the things I've shared is nothing new. It amplifies what we already do. We just had that 58% of African women are entrepreneurs. I know you've got it, but let's continue to master some of these principles and know that it's okay to go against the grain. And you've got it, African women. Keep going. Thank you.
I love that. Yes, so mine, Fifi, is clarity and complexity. And I think, that should be what a leader should try and pursue, to provide that clarity in complexity.
Okay, clarity and complexity. That was going to be the last word, but Mamkoni, you're going to get me into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. No, because I was the first to say, so I don't think I said it very, very right.
Okay.
So I wrote something interesting here. I said, entrepreneurship teach us that uncertainty is not a barrier to leadership. It is the environment in which leadership is proven. So I thought I must bring that one.
It's not the barrier, it's the environment in which leadership is proven.
It's proven, yes.
Bottom line, prove yourselves, leaders of the Forbes Women Africa Leading Women Summit. Thank you so much. Can you please join me in thanking our panelists for this morning?
Thank you.
And